Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Happy about that. And it's a festive period, so. But I do want to say thank you all for being here. I think it's very special for us because we actually started this and we've been doing it for a while. But through the help of the NHRC, we've been able to bring our dream of bringing it back to Abuja to a reality. So I just want to appreciate the National Human Rights for that. So I start now with the thing that has been for the life and care we have thank you for 10 human rights, sexuality, and they have been marked with national human rights. The government also want to challenge this case. I cannot be right. But today, we should go for right and we want to keep for it. Right. because you actually started this and you've been doing it for a while. But through the help of the NHRC, we've been able to bring our dream of bringing it back to Abuja to a reality. So I just want to appreciate the National Human Rights for that. So I start now with the thing we get seen for the life and care is we have a position then human rights, sexuality. They have been marked with national human rights. Government sought to challenge the national issue. But today, we should come forward and we want to keep right. He actually started this and we worked very well. Through the help of the NHRC, we needed to bring our dream of bringing it back to Abuja to a reality. So I just want to appreciate the National Human Rights. So I start now with the thing here.
We hear the thoughts of Tony Ojukwu. And I have also been informed that not only do we have your distinguished selves here today, we have joining us via Zoom our 36 states offices. This is a show of commitment on how we value the topic that is being addressed here today. And I want to, on behalf of all of you, also welcome them who have joined us from the 36 states via Zoom for this event. It is an honor to stand before you today at this symposium dedicated to a very important discourse on human rights, sexuality, and the law. 76 years ago, when the Universal Declaration was adopted as a common standard for all peoples and all nations, it did not discriminate on which human right should be respected, which human right should be protected. It rather gave us a unique document, which was a gift to the world after we have all suffered the horrendous 4 years of World War II, that there is a need for us to become human again. So 76 years after that unique document was adopted, we should not be talking about discrimination. We should not be talking about which human rights should be respected and which ones should not be respected. I want to thank the Initiative for Equal Rights, TS, on choosing the theme, Institutional Responsibility in Upholding Human Rights for All. This speaks to not only at the heart of our work at the National Human Rights Commission, but also to the broader challenges and opportunities we face in the global human rights community. At its core, human rights are universal. They belong to each of us, irrespective of our gender, our race, religion, economic status, or sexuality. These rights are inherent, they are inalienable, and they are fundamental to the dignity of every human being. Yet, despite these universally established principles, the enjoyment of these rights remain a matter of concern, particularly when it comes to the issue of sexuality and gender equality, as well as gender identity. The roles of institutions in promoting human rights can never be overemphasized. Institutions, whether governmental, judicial, education, civic-based, healthcare related, business related, all serve as the foundation upon which our collective human rights framework are made operational and enforceable. They are the custodians of justice and fairness, tasked with creating and maintaining an environment where the rights of every individual are protected. However, institutions are not just passive structures. They are shaped by policies, by laws, and most importantly, people. The responsibility to uphold human rights, therefore, lies with all of us who work in different institutions wherever we may find ourselves. Permit me to digress a bit to talk about international human rights law obligations. The international human rights system provides for a 3-layered human rights obligations by government. They are the right to promote, the obligation to promote, the obligation to protect, and the obligation to fulfill human rights. In the obligation to promote, member states of the United Nations are called upon to embark upon programs, embark upon activities that will promote human rights, educate citizens about their rights, educate them upon the channels that they would use to achieve their rights, and to ensure that human rights education is at the heart of the educational system of every country. The obligation to protect enjoins member states to lay down legal and institutional mechanisms upon which human rights will be protected. These mechanisms include establishing, of course, national human rights institutions like ours, but above all, establishment and strengthening of law enforcement to protect lives and properties, but also judicial branches of government to be able to provide remedies and access to justice. However, the most important of them all is the obligation to fulfill. Under the obligation to fulfill, every government must lay down institutional, budgetary, policy, and programmatic foundations upon which human rights will be actively realized. They include, of course, ensuring the establishment of an informed and essentially do we have for human rights distinguished education today, health, we have social welfare, and ensuring that citizens have access to these services without any discrimination, any hindrance whatsoever. And it is on that note today that I am telling you that in Nigeria, as in many other countries, discussions about sexuality and are often met with instant resistance and also reluctance. These obviously are rooted in a complex web of cultural, religious, and societal norms and idiosyncrasies that have shaped our perceptions for generations. However, human rights are not subjected to popular opinion. Human rights are not subjected to polls. The rights that a country would promote or protect is not about public opinion. It is rather about intrinsic human values, intrinsic human dignities. They are at the core of enjoyment of human rights. And these rights must be upheld at all times, especially when they challenge us to think differently and act with great compassion and inclusivity. Permit me to go briefly into the legal perspectives, our legal perspectives on sexuality and human rights. The law plays a pivotal role in determining the extent to which human rights, particularly those relating to sexuality, are protected or violated. Legal frameworks provide structure for how we define and defend these rights. The Nigerian Constitution guarantees the fundamental rights of all citizens, including the right to life, to dignity, freedom from discrimination, and personal liberty. Some of these rights, like the rights to dignity and freedom from discrimination, are non-derogable. The state cannot choose when to guarantee them and when not to guarantee them. They are at the core of our humanity. Not by law, not by the Constitution itself, will these two rights that I have mentioned ever be taken from Nigerians. But as we all know, the law is often a double-edged sword. While it has the power to protect, it can also be used to oppress people. This is particularly true for marginalized groups, including those whose sexual orientation or gender identity differs radically from that of the mainstream. In recent years, the international community has made giant strides in raising and addressing the rights of people. Countries across the globe have repealed discriminatory laws, implemented policies to prevent violence against citizens who are of diverse sexual orientation, and gendered identities. These frameworks that have been adopted affirm the rights of all individuals to live their rights free from fear, from persecution or violence based on their sexuality. However, there remains very significant parts of the world, including the developed world and Nigeria, where legal frameworks have been misused or misapplied, where citizens have been stigmatized, discriminations perpetrated, and individual rights denied based on person's sexuality. The Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act of 2014 is one of those examples. Prior to the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, we had in our criminal laws sections and provisions that already criminalize homosexual acts and other sexual-related offenses, but yet in 2014, the government of Nigeria at the federal level passed this obnoxious legislation that has been condemned both at the national level and globally. By criminalizing not only same-sex union, but also the expression and the expressions, the advocacy, even the organizing related to same-sex marriage, related to the work of key population, is one of the most evil legislation we have ever passed in the history of this country. The Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act could be likened to the draconian military decrees of the 80s that set Nigerian back legally, socially, and politically. The legislation has made it difficult for many Nigerians to live freely, safely, and with dignity. Furthermore, we have witnessed that as a result of this Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, there are disturbing trends of human rights violations targeting key populations, including indiscriminate arrests, prolonged detention without access to bail, profiling, torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, and tragically targeted killings. Notable among those who have recently lost their lives are Ifeanyi Chukwu Aga Benedict, known as Abuja Area Mama, Mr. Christopher, National Chairman of National Key Population Health and Rights Network, and Executive Director of Concerned Youth for Development Initiative. May we rise and observe a minute silence for these comrades that have fallen within the air. Idiosyncrasies that have shaped our perceptions for generations. However, human rights are not subjected to popular opinion. Human rights are not subjected to polls. May their deaths not be in vain, and may their souls rest in peace. You may have your seat. It is rather about intrinsic incidents like the ones we have highlighted underscore the urgent need for enhanced protection and respect for human rights of key populations by every institution in Nigeria. The NHRC notes with concern the societal and cultural hostility directed towards members of the community manifesting in discriminatory attitude within families, within communities, places of worship, and workplaces. These actions are discriminatory in nature and lead to a climate that encourages the violation of the constitutionally guaranteed rights of all persons, irrespective of their sex or sexual orientation. Stigma and discrimination not only undermine the social and psychological well-being of individuals, but also hamper their economic development, perpetuating cycles of inequality. Beyond the legal dimensions lies a deeper social responsibility, one that asks us to consider what kind of society we want to be. Do we want to be a society that chooses and selects the human rights to protect for its citizens? Do we want to be the kind of society that classifies its citizens based on what they profess? Do we want to be a society that will live for the next generation of Nigerians a climate of discriminatory practices that places some Nigerians above the others? Protect some Nigerians and protect others. Surely this is not the kind of society that the Universal Declaration envisaged 76 years ago. This is not the kind of society our founding fathers envisaged 64 years ago. Certainly this is not the kind of society that the great giant of Africa would want for its citizens, living and yet unborn. Beyond the legal dimension that we have mentioned today, we hope that individuals working as government, as civil society, must ensure that we take bold steps to uphold human rights for all without exception. What has the NHRC done? As an organization that is solely charged with the promotion and protection of human rights, the National Human Rights Commission understands the challenging environment which members of the communities have found themselves today in Nigeria. We also operate in that challenging legal, institutional, and social environment as a commission. However, we know that some aspects of the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, our criminal code, penal code, Sharia laws, present key challenges to eliminating discrimination against the population in Nigeria. But we are not resting, we are not bemoaning, we are not cursing our fate. We have decided to take action. And that is why, in partnership with many civil society organizations, including TS, the National Human Rights Commission was involved in more than 15 cases filed before the Federal High Court, which resulted in the effective abrogation of many aspects of the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. So that today, the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act has been abrogated, leaving only the section and the subsection that deals with organization of same-sex marriage unions. What does this mean in reality? It means that every aspect of the act that prohibits this kind of gathering, that stops organization from professing, from advocating against the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, that supports organizations to promote the rights of LGBTQI communities in Nigeria, that promotes discussions, consensus building, partnership, advocacy. All of those sections that abrogate, that criminalizes these things I have mentioned have been abrogated. And I think it is a very big win for the human rights community in Nigeria. The Human Rights Commission would like to express its appreciation to TS and many other organizations that were involved in this legal fight. As a commission, we were invited as amicus, we were invited as observers. In some of them, we also joined in the institution of those cases. Additionally, I need to inform you that the NHRC has successfully obtained court judgments against Sharia courts in Bauchi State, which sentenced 3 men to death by stoning for homosexual acts. More recently, in August 2024, we secured another victory on appeal against a similar Sharia court judgment in Mararaba, Bauchi, that also sentenced a middle-aged man to death by stoning for homosexual acts. about emotional prosecution, as we have seen in the Bauchi cases, is that when institutions of government embark upon emotional prosecution based on religious ground or cultural ground biases, they tend to make catalogs of legal mistakes. These legal mistakes infringe upon the human rights of Nigerians. For example, in the Ningi 3 case in Bauchi, the Bauchi Hizbah, the Islamic police, was the arresting authority, it was the prosecuting authority, it was the jury, and it intimidated the judge into giving judgment. We are a country of laws, we are a country, a civilized nation, and there are things that should not be happening to our citizens in Nigeria in 2024. And that is what the Commission stands against. Beyond our legal victories, the National Human Rights Commission has taken proactive institutional steps by drafting guidelines, policy advisories on issues that pertain to the protection of the rights of key population. I will talk about a few of them briefly. We have just recently drafted guidelines on the arrest, detention, and prosecution of key populations in Nigeria. This guideline is specifically addressed to law enforcement because we have seen that when arrest, detention, and prosecution as it regards LGBTQI communities, the police seem to forget constitutional guarantees, and our guideline is trying to bring them back to constitutional realities. Recently also, in the wake of the backlash that greeted the Nigerians acceding to the Samoa Agreement, also known as the European Union Partnership Agreement with members of Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, we witnessed in Nigeria attacks on organizations, individuals who are providing life-saving services to Nigerians, especially in northern Nigeria. And there was, across Nigeria, across the media, falsehood, fake news regarding the Samoa Agreement, stating that it commits Nigeria to accepting LGBTQI ideology and effectively repealing the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. The good thing is that at the Commission, we were a bit happy at what was happening because this is the first time the Commission, the government, groups like TEARS, all of us are in unison that this LGBTQI thing is not the main problem in this country. The Samoa Agreement does not have any provision for it. We read the Samoa Agreement over 1 million times. It talks about human rights. All of us agree on human rights. It talks about gender equality. It talks about sexual and reproductive health and rights. And as at the time these arguments were raging, Nigeria has tens of containers waiting to be cleared from UNFPA, from WHO, all of them talking about Planned Parenthood, family planning commodities. So Nigeria was already working with member states, working with UN agencies, receiving donations for Planned Parenthood, for family planning. So the government was placed in some sort of quagmire Because one, it was falsehood that was being perpetrated. Secondly, this was not our problem. The Samoa Agreement is an economic and development partnership agreement. It has nothing to do with the rights of LGBTQI community. And the attack was baseless, it was not warranted, it was just an opportunity people had to perpetrate evil that have been in their minds for many, many years now. And we are happy that we were able to write to the authorities expressing our concern and also advising on what needs to be done. We note that we are witnessing major human rights transformation in Nigeria and across the world. And we want to appeal to every person who is holding governmental power today that the time has come for us to begin to review laws in Nigeria that were hastily passed without recourse to Nigeria's human rights obligation at regional and also at global level. And this is where I would now want to talk about call to action. The responsibility of institutions in this regard, recalling my earlier presentation about the three-layered obligation of government. First, we need to have legal reforms. We need to have legal reforms that would re-examine our laws, policies, and practices to ensure that they reflect our commitment to upholding human rights for all. Where laws are outdated or discriminatory, as we have seen with the SSNPA, or outright harmful in its implementation, again, as we have seen with the SSNPA and our criminal codes, we must take steps to repeal or amend them. Where gaps exist, like our constitution, in protection of marginalized groups, we must create new laws, we must amend the constitution to provide for the necessary safeguards. Secondly, institutions must prioritize the education and training of their personnel. Law enforcement officers, judges, healthcare workers, and public officials all play critical roles in how human rights are experienced by individuals. There should be comprehensive training on human rights, especially with regard to the protection of human rights of key population. The National Human Rights Commission has already taken the step by the issuance of the guidelines. In 2025, we would be, with support from the global funds, we would be embarking on trainings for law enforcement, advocacy for leadership of law enforcement as well, on some of these human rights violations. This would ensure that those tasked with enforcing our laws do so with fairness, respect, and understanding. There must be accountability for human rights violations. Those who go about butchering, killing, or maiming members of the community should be brought to book. Investigation of cases involving human rights violations of LGBTQI community should be given utmost priority and importance because of the nature of the crimes which should be declared as hate crimes by the authorities. And we also, thank you, we also would like to call upon every person who belongs to this community of marginalized groups to understand that we share your pains. We stand with you, but you must also uphold your rights. Uphold your rights by reporting violations that have occurred to you, by also reporting violations that have occurred to persons who are either afraid or unable to report human rights violations that have been meted upon them. Our duty to protect your rights cannot happen in a vacuum. They can only be facilitated when these rights violations are reported. As a nation, we must foster a culture of respect and inclusivity where laws and policies are critical to upholding human rights of all Nigerians. We must also work to change attitudes at family, at local government level, at state level, and at national level. We must change our perception on how we see people who are different from us. They are different from us sometimes not because of their own choosing. They are different from us, but they may not have been made differently. They are entitled to their rights, they are entitled to their orientation, they are also entitled to their fundamental human rights. That has been given to them by God and by the Constitution. In conclusion, I would like, ladies and gentlemen, to say that the responsibility to uphold all human rights in Nigeria is not the burden of a single institution or individual. It is a collective responsibility, one that we all share. At the National Human Rights Commission, we remain committed to doing our part, supporting organizations as we are doing today, but also protecting individuals. But we cannot do this alone, and that is why we continue to call on our development partners, we continue to call on civil society, we continue to call on the judiciary and the private sector. All individuals and organizations have a role to play in sustaining human rights, in protecting the rights of all, in ensuring that the dignity of every Nigerian is protected. The responsibility of institutions, despite the sexual orientation or gender identity. As we commence this symposium today, let us renew our commitment to this cause, a cause of equality, a cause of life of dignity and happiness for all. Let us strive to create a Nigeria where every individual, regardless of their sexuality or gender identity, can live with dignity, freedom, and equality. Together we can build a future where human rights are truly upheld for all. Thank you very much.
Hi, please let's give another round of applause. Thank you so much, Mr. Hilary and Dr. Tony Ojoku. Like Mr. Hilary said, he said we'll be hearing his voice, but it's the words of Dr. Tony Ojoku. That was like a very beautiful piece, hearing all the work and effort that the NHRC has put into supporting marginalized communities. And one thing I can say is that for the past 10 years, TS's relationship with the NHRC started 10 years ago, right? And it has been incremental, gradual steps. And looking at, all of what that effort has turned to, starting from, work in terms of the amicus briefs for the SSMPA challenge and the Dingy 3, all of the other cases, the NHRC has been very responsive. And it's been beautiful to see because there are a whole lot of Nigerian institutions and organizations that oftentimes lead with emotions when it comes to the issues that affect our community. And when you talk about human rights, oftentimes you see human rights activists, human rights advocates, even wanting to nullify human rights just for the fact that they have some sort of emotional bias to the topic at hand. But it's very refreshing to see a National Human Rights Commission in West Africa that is really standing on its principles to say that it's human rights for all. And since this is Nigeria's Human Rights Commission, it's saying human rights for all Nigerians, irrespective of your status or differences. Please, once again, let's give the NHRC a round of applause. So now we'll be moving on to the next thing on our agenda. I hope that we are in the room. Sometimes you get to be in a space, but our minds are 1,000 miles apart. So I hope that we are all still here. Please bear with us. It's going to be brief. We are going to give you the keynotes, findings. We are going to give you some of the information that have come out from this year, and then we would, depart for today. So I'm going to call on Alexandra, who is going to take us through the 2024 Human Rights Violations Report. And before Alexandra comes up, I want to say that for 11 years, right, TIERS has been, publishing human rights violations reports based on SOGIEX. So sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics. Why? Because we saw a gap that persons who are lesbians, gay, bisexual, queer, trans, gender non-conforming are faced with different types of human rights violations that are ordinarily not even being recorded or addressed just because of who they are. So we embarked on a mission to ensure that, we put this information out there. And TIERS, in partnership with many other organizations, some of which are here, started up compiling this report. And how do we do this? Through response to human rights violations based on SOGIEX. And at the end of the year, we compile these findings based on our report, our response rather. So on this note, I would like to call up Alexandra Maduagu, the Programs Officer, Human Rights and Advocacy for the Initiative for Equal Rights, to take us through what we have for the 2024 Human Rights Violations Report. Please, let's give them a round of applause.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's still my lovely face. Okay, so my name is Alexandra, like my colleague has rightfully said, and I'm here representing TIERS, of course, as the Human Rights and Advocacy Program Officer. And I want to just take us through the key findings of the 2024 Human Rights Violations Report based on real or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression and sex characteristics. So any moment the media team is ready, we will begin. Okay. Sorry, folks. Okay, so while that is coming up, okay, here we are. So I wanted this to be projected before I start speaking, not because I don't know the title of the report, but because I would like for us to just pay a moment of attention to this title, because I think it says a lot. So the 2024 Human Rights Violations Report, based on real or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, SOGIEX, in Nigeria. This means a lot of the time, you don't even have to be LGBTQIA+ to experience these violations, because people can just profile you, stereotype you based on some mannerisms that you have, maybe how you dress or whatever, and conclude on your sexual orientation or gender identity, and then met out the violence, some of the violence that we're about to see in this report. And so, yes, I really think that it's very important to highlight that, because a lot of the time when we talk about human rights and we zero in on LGBTQIA plus rights, people tend to think that it doesn't concern them. Meanwhile, LGBTQIA plus rights are human rights because we are all people, and you can't tell who is LGBTQIA plus by looking at them. But people think they can, and they will go based on those assumptions and be violent towards you in many different ways, as we are about to see. Yes, okay, so we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So like my colleague rightfully mentioned, we've been documenting these violations for the past 10 years with our partner organizations. When we started off, we had about 10 partner organizations. Now we have 24 partner organizations scattered across Nigeria who are receiving reports of human rights violations, documenting them and responding to them as best they can. And we have seen the same thing over the years, and that's what discrimination, harassment, violence, and abuse going on unchecked. In fact, most of it is state-sanctioned, which poses a huge challenge for us, because when you seek recourse, legal recourse from some of these, like the police, the judiciary, and so on and so forth, that then poses a secondary layer of violation because a lot of them have biases that color the work that they do, where they are supposed to be upholding the human rights of all, providing justice for people who have been violated. You find out that they either turn you away, which I think is a best case result, unless, of course, the few cases where sometimes that they actually respond. But you're either turned away or you're further violated or even arrested on the spot based on whatever it is you come to report, because they were like, oh, so you are LGBTQ+, and you're saying that you face this violation, but you're admitting to being LGBTQ+, so you've done something wrong, and then they arrest you. So these are some of the challenges and why it's very difficult to advocate for the rights of LGBTQ+ people in Nigeria. And as our NHRC representative, Mr. Hillary, has rightfully mentioned, there's an urgent need for legal reform. There's an urgent need for a cultural overhaul of what we understand as our values. There's a need for approaching human rights, approaching people through a human rights lens rather than a religion and, in quotes, cultural lens, right? So that is it for the introduction. We can go to the next slide. I don't want to dwell on the legal context because Mr. Hillary has, I think, highlighted a lot of them, but like he mentioned, the Nigerian Constitution guarantees all of us fundamental human rights. However, you find that because of the existence of certain sections of the penal and criminal codes and some other laws, but most especially because of the SSMPA, the rights of LGBTQI+ people are being denied. So people often think, yes, we are all guaranteed rights under the Nigerian Constitution. However, not you. No, not you. You don't deserve. Not you, this LGBT person. You don't deserve any of this. And when we start to pick apart who is deserving of human rights, then we have nullified the whole thing. Because, I mean, why can't I? What stops me from coming tomorrow and saying, oh, because I don't like the way you look, I'm going to violate you, and you have nowhere to turn to, So yes, we are also, Nigeria is also, you can please go back. I mean, we can move forward. There are some international treaties that Nigeria is a party to, including the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which are supposed to guarantee equality and non-discrimination. But we find that even in our own legislature, we don't uphold these treaties. So we can go to the next one. So since the passage of the SSMPA, we noticed a spike in human rights violations. This is not to say that human rights violations due to sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics, SOGIESC, was not the norm before the SSMPA. But once it was passed, people thought, okay, this means that the government agrees that these people are a blight on society and must be wiped out. And so a lot of people took it into their own hands to basically met out violence. Like, I've heard stories that when the law was passed, people were in their houses and then mobs came in because they knew, okay, you are an LGBT person, you are queer. They went into their houses, they dragged them out, and then they, enacted mob violence on them. And so since 2014, we have seen a gradual increase in the human rights violations against LGBTQIA+ people. And while this could be due to the increase in number of reporting organizations, it still calls for alarm because it means that even tomorrow, if we increase from 24 to 100, then we have a bit more, we have a larger number, and we have a bit more understanding of how normalized violence against LGBTQI plus people is. And I think is what is of note to discuss. 2023, which was just last year, we recorded the highest ever number of human rights violations against LGBTQI plus people. We had 996 cases, and that was a whopping, it was really jarring for all of us in the sector to witness, because it's like we've been doing all this work, all this while, collaborations, engagements with state actors, advocacy, engaging the government, and yet these are the numbers that we have seen. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. I just want to quickly mention the methodology, like my colleagues have mentioned and I've also mentioned. We gather reports through our network of partner organizations, some of whom are in this room today. And we also gather reports through eyewitnesses, social media, because from time to time, a video will just go viral of somebody being attacked or beaten, humiliated, and even killed sometimes just because they're LGBTQI+. And as harrowing as those videos are, they give you an insight into where the society is at as regards LGBTQI+ people, because people say things like they want to cleanse the land, in quotes, and these things have like religious and cultural undertones, where they believe that the existence of queer people is somehow damaging the land. I don't know. But yes, these cases were gathered and then they were analyzed, and then that provided the data that we have published in these reports. And so we're going to look at some of the key findings. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, okay, so I know you can see some of these things, but I will just focus on the higher numbers. We have 241 cases of assault, 129 cases of combined assault and battery, 173 cases of blackmail, and then we have 12 cases of arbitrary arrest, 10 cases of conversion practices, 54 cases of discrimination. And this discrimination cuts across every sector: healthcare, religious institutions, education, employment, everywhere that someone can go to, all the facets of society that one needs to have a proper safety net. You find that there's discrimination against LGBTQI+ people in those sectors. There's 118 cases of harassment, and the numbers are actually they're just staggering. We also have 12 cases of kidnapping. However, I would say that because we don't report these cases using specific terminologies like, let me highlight number 80, Keto, 84 cases of Keto, which is right beside kidnapping. Those two can be overlapped in the sense that Keto is an experience where someone is lured to a location, often because they are LGBTQIA+, they are lured to a location, they are blackmailed, they are beaten up, they are, of course that is kidnapping because they are confined for days sometimes, where they are facing this torture, they are facing this humiliation, and they are extorted, and their items stolen from them. And so if you merge those two numbers, and if you link it with the assault and battery, because Keto is basically kidnapping, assault and battery, thefts, and all these other things combined. So the data is very much linked to one another. But yes, we're going to, and then there's 3 cases of murder, killings, 3 cases of unlawful dismissal, in the sense that people often, once their identity is discovered, they are fired from their jobs, they are kicked out of their accommodations. And while those numbers may seem small, it's important to note that people still are not encouraged to make reports whenever their rights are violated, because they believe that nothing is going to come of it, because they understand that this violence is state-sanctioned. Because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the time when people go to report that their rights have been violated, the situation turns on them, because the question then comes up as to why were your rights violated. And once it's discovered that it had to do with their sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics, they are detained and extorted and further violated. So let's go into the next slide. we are going to discuss the trends in violations that we have observed this year, although I can tell you for free that it mirrors the reports that we've gotten in the previous years. So we see that the most popular state sanctioned or violations by state actors on LGBTQI plus people includes arbitrary mass arrests, where they can just come to a gathering like this, where we are discussing, human rights, and arrest everybody and say, oh, it's because somebody was being married, there was a gay marriage somewhere happening. And a lot of the time they refuse to charge those cases to court because they can't prove that there's a gay marriage happening right now. So what they want is they detain those people, they torture them, they scare them a lot of the time so that they can get, money from them, they can extort them, after which they are then released. Which then begs the question, is it really about the identity of the people? Is it really about the, in quotes, gay marriage, if you have extorted them and you've set them back? So if it's like that, I can actually get married. If you eventually arrest me, I will just give you a little something, and then you release me, So it doesn't really matter to them anyway. They've just seen that that is an angle that they can get some money from. And so, yes, I think we've already mentioned profiling. Yes, Mr. Hillary mentioned profiling, harassment, and torture during detention, because they immediately forget that the person that they have detained is a human being, and they do all sorts of things, There are people living with traumas today that we cannot imagine because of they fell into the hands of police like this. And it can be sometimes that you're in a cab or you're in a car or you're on the road and you're stopped by police because they have profiled you and they think of you as, somewhat queer looking. And that is how you end up in their cell, in their clutches. And a lot of times these arrests are undocumented because it's not, they don't intend to do anything with it. They just want to collect their money and go. So yes, we've mentioned all of that. And then the most violations we see for non-state actors includes the keto that I've mentioned, which is very, very rampant. I don't even think the data correctly captures how rampant keto cases are. I think even as we are right now, maybe at least 10 people in this state are being ketoed as we speak. So it's really, really rampant and really lucrative for them. There are several gangs, that's what they do. And I think it's important to note that, when Mr. Hillary was presenting the data from previous months, the national human rights reports that they have documented, kidnapping is a consistent thing and is also on the rise. It's also one of the most, the highest form of violations that you see. It just tells you it's not different. The data is not different between what LGBTQI plus people face, except that they are experiencing this kidnapping, this detention, this blackmail. They're experiencing it because they are LGBTQI plus people. So if we really care about human rights and if we really care about, securing the dignity and freedom from discrimination and rights to life of human beings in Nigeria, shouldn't we be talking about how to fully eradicate these violations, including the ones that affect LGBTQI plus people? Yes, so in addition to keto, queer people face, I will also use queer interchangeably with LGBTQI plus, just because sometimes it can be a mouthful. So yes, they face community violence, hate speech. Hate speech is a rampant thing. You just walk somewhere and someone's talking about how LGBTQI plus people are a blight and they need to be killed freely without penalties. Especially in churches, religious institutions, we get that a lot. So queer people sometimes struggle with their freedom to practice their religion, freedom of religion and belief. They struggle with that because they go to their religious institutions and they're consistently being talked down on. And then physical and sexual assault, which is also, a lot of the time, sexual assault is a component of keto, which is very interesting because you are ketoing this person because you think that they are wrong and then you sexually assault them, make it make sense. That means, aren't you also, queer, and aren't you also, isn't it a self-hating act that you are doing? Anyway, and then there is sexual violence against women and people who are non-men, essentially, because a lot of the time when families find out, sometimes partners, find out that their loved one, in quotes, is queer, they think they can change them. And one of the methods they employ is, in quotes, corrective rape, which is sexual assault. And And intimate partner violence is also on the rise because there's nowhere to go and report, because if you go and report, you have to expose yourself as queer, and then you run the risk of being further violated. So we can go to the next page. Thank you. And then also this year, we saw a rise in technology-facilitated harassment. LGBTQIA+ organizations were doxxed, targeted, their contact information plastered on group chats, and conversations inciting hate against them were trending, essentially. And this was due to the Samoa agreement that was signed and the misinformation that came as a result of that. And that really started because of one man. He wrote an article, he went to media houses, and he kept saying that, oh, that Samoa agreement has words like gender equality, has words like family planning, and those are code words for LGBTQIA+ rights. And that article was broadcasted within conservative group chats, and that was how the whole thing blew up, which led to several organizations taking down their websites, going into hiding, some of whom are still in hiding today. And then there's also digital harassment. So there were also individuals that were affected by that misinformation, and they also had to go into hiding. And then on a consistent basis, blackmail content can go viral. Like when people are keyed, it's the internet that is used to distribute their blackmail content, and that is also a form of technological facilitated violence that queer people face. And so we also face family and societal discrimination, because the family is a lot of the time the first point of call, the first place where someone's rights are violated as a queer person, because they, once they are outed to their family members, they face forced evictions, they face conversion practices. Conversion practices are any acts that are designed to change one's sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, but have been scientifically proven to be, illegitimate acts, essentially, because they don't work. We all know they don't work. There's research that shows it doesn't work. In fact, mental health institutions have outlawed the practice because it's been proven scientifically to not work. So that's why now we see conversion practices happening mostly in religious institutions where there are barely any regulations. So that is often the next step. Once family members are out, once a queer person is outed to their family members, the family would either try and change their sexual orientation or gender identity through means that could often involve starvation, forced confinement, assault, beatings. There was a video that went viral the other time where they were using candle wax and things like that. Just a lot of torturous acts that you can barely even imagine, because they think that those things will, in quote, change them. And sexual assaults, let's not forget that. And then there's also strict housing discrimination, in the sense that once someone is exposed as queer in their family, in their community where they live, they are immediately kicked out by their landlord, and that's the end of that. And then we face systemic barriers, denial of healthcare, education, housing, employment, like I earlier mentioned. Anything someone deserves, someone needs to have to function in society, you find that queer people are denied those things because of their identity, which makes absolutely no sense. And then there are secondary violations within the LGBTQI+ community as a result of the lack of access to justice. So someone cannot report when their rights is violated, so everyone just thinks everything is fair game. So let's go to the next slide. And this has created an unspoken public health crisis. I would say in layman terms that the mental health of LGBTQI+ people is in shambles. I would say that because of the climate, the socioeconomic and sociocultural climate, we face chronic stress, depression, anxiety, and trauma, and there are very few places to go to get recourse. There's also limited healthcare access, limited mental health care access, and limited physical and sexual healthcare access. We can go to the next slide. So this brings us to our recommendations that we've been publishing for the past 10 years, some of which are now in force, some of which we hope will still be adopted. So to the government, we ask that these discriminatory laws be repealed, so that we can ensure the constitutional rights of all Nigerians. And then that protective measures are put in place so that LGBTQI plus people have where to turn to when their rights are violated. And then to the NHRC, we see that there's already a lot of this in progress, and we would love to ask that the good work continue. We would love for commission members to be trained on SOGIESC, to continue your collaboration with LGBTQI plus organizations, to advocate on a public and a national level against inciting violence, and to develop accessible reporting mechanisms for every queer Nigerian to make reports when their rights are violated. And to the police force, please cease arbitrary arrests. Investigate and prosecute violence against LGBTQI plus individuals, and partner with civil society organizations to improve officers' understanding of SOGIESC. That said, I would encourage you to, when you get your copy of the reports, please go through it. It's a hard read, I wouldn't lie, but it has a lot of information that would inform your advocacy as a human rights defendant, or even just as a human being, because you probably have queer people within your circle even if you don't know it. So to be a better person, it would be good to understand the violations that they face or they are at risk for. So now, you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I would love to thank and to invite our partners that are here. Thank you so much for your reporting, for your response, for doing the work consistently, tirelessly. Please, if your representatives are here, I would ask you to join me on stage so we can launch this report. So there is Access to Good Health Initiative. Please, let's clap as we hear their names. Thank you. God bless. Dynamic Initiative for Healthcare and Human Rights. Oh, I saw Emanuela just now. Maybe she stepped out. Hope Alive Health Awareness. Thank you. Improved Sexual Health and Rights Advocacy Initiative. Initiative for Improved Male Health. International Center for Advocacy and Rights to Health, ICAR. Keto Diaries, KD. Total Health Empowerment and Development Initiative, TEDI. Women's Health and Equal Rights, WARE. Men's Health and Support Initiative, MHSI. Initiative for Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights Awareness, ISHRA. Achievers Improved Health Initiative, IHE. Initiative for Gender Equality, Health and Rights. Initiative for Gender Equality and Sexual Reproductive Health. Community Health Initiative for Youths in Nigeria, CHIN. Pure Hearts for Youth and Vulnerable Persons Initiative. International Center for Total Health and Rights Advocacy Empowerment. Access to Health and Rights Development Initiative, ADI. Responsive Action for Sustainable Empowerment Initiative, RAISI. Creme de la Creme House of Fame Foundation, CDLC. Response to Health and Rights Initiative, RHRI. Wave Makers Initiative for Health and Youth Empowerment. Initiative for the Advancement of Improved Health and Rights, Improved Health and Development, and Minority Watch. Oh, please, yes, just come up. Thank you, Emanuela. Let me be sure we're all up here. Okay. Oh, please, we're going to, yes, please. Ideally, let's all have a copy, please. Let's all hold a copy, and then we'll snap some pictures. Okay. Call it a day. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, thank you very much. Please, can I invite Chimdi Maike to join us? Thank you. Yes, thank you. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your ear. Everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Alex, for doing this justice. And, you know, we at Chairs, as well as our partners, we do tireless work every year to ensure that we collate, validate, and publish this in time. And I am very happy that once again, for the 11th time, we have done this again. While our symposium is, this is the 10th edition, the report is the 11th, because we started publishing the reports before we started the symposium. So now it's time for photo ops, because we know that towards the end of the event, people leave. So we want to call up, we'll take it turns, civil society organizations, then we'll call on diplomatic missions, then we'll call on state actors to come on the stage, and we'll quickly take pictures. After that, we get into the panel discussion, we have our presentation, and then we'll be done for today. So can I call on, let's start with the state actors in the building, NHRC, NACA, if they are here already, the police, any state actors, please can you come on stage? Executive Director of TIERS and the TIERS team, please can you quickly come on stage to take pictures? So we want to finish this in 10 minutes, everything, so we can move on. LGBTQI organizations, please can you come forward? And activists, please come forward. Civil society organizations, human rights organizations, activists, please come forward.
Sorry, just before we take the picture, I wanted to use this opportunity because, you know, we have moving parts, but I wanted to break a little bit of protocol. Can we give these people a round of applause? And why I say so is these are the faces of the people that are fighting the good fight. These are the faces of the people that on a daily, they get sent messages of hate, they get discriminated against, but they still show up. They still show up and they do the work, and they do it intelligently, they do it confidently, they do it competently. So please, another round of applause for these people. Thank you so much. Continue to fight the good fight until we have freedom for all. Thank you.
So finally, please let's have embassies, missions, consulates, delegations, EU delegation to come up and let's take pictures. GISG, please. International organizations, please come forward. Thank you so much. We'll continue with general pictures right after we are done. Okay, so right now we are moving into the panel discussion, and the title for the discussion is Challenges and Opportunities for Nigerian Institutions in Upholding Human Rights. And this is a very, very important conversation to be had, and we are going to be having this conversation with like experts and seasoned voices within the movement and outside of the movement. But I would like to call on our moderator for this session, Onide Oluwaseun, who is going to take us on this. Onide is going to introduce herself as well as introduce other panelists. Thank you so much, Onide, and you are looking very dapper.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Uma. Thank you all for being here. My name is Onide Oluwaseun Olutoni. I'm an intersectional activist. I program and advocate for the rights of women and sexual and gender diverse persons. I will be introducing our panels. Although this is a very, very important conversation that we're having, my gratitude to Mr. Hilary, Afolabi, Chimdima, and Alex for doing some of the conversations that we have enough justice for us to build this particular conversation on. So for the panel, we'll be talking about the challenges and opportunities for Nigerian institutions in upholding human rights. And the first person I will be bringing to the stage is Mr. Hilary. Please, can you kindly display? I mean, we've heard so much about the amazing work you're doing. We've heard a lot about your portfolio. We're really glad that you're here to join us for this conversation. Please, because we have very brief time, I will not be repeating, his portfolio is the work that he's doing. However, they are going to display that. And the next on our list is Augusta Yaku. Professor Olayinka Atilola. Mr. Ahmad Shuaibu Balarabe. Thank you all for joining us. We're supposed to have one other person on the panel, however, he's unable to join us. How are we all doing? So I'm going to be giving you a minute just to talk about yourself and the work that you're doing. Augusta, can we start with you?
Thank you so much, Onide. Good morning, everyone. My name is Augusta Yaku. I'm a feminist lawyer and the founder and executive director for Lex Initiative. Lex Initiative is a feminist-led organization and lawyers-led organization that provides pro bono legal services and generally legally empower an intersection of marginalized women. So that's what we do. Thank you.
Good afternoon all. My name is Ahmad Shuaibu Balarabe. I'm a prosecutor with the Kaduna State Ministry of Justice. I'm equally the director for Balarabe Maika Foundation for Human Rights Advocacy. We render services for all human rights violation. I'm also a legal practitioner for 10 years post-call experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Olayinka Atilola. I'm a medical doctor. I'm also a psychiatrist. I am a professor of psychiatry. I teach the subject at Lagos State University in Lagos. I'm also a honorary consultant psychiatrist to Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. I have been involved in a lot of advocacy work relating to shaping the mental health space on the subject of LGBTQ community. I have been involved in advocacies around the subject of conversion practices among people who are within the LGBTQIA community. And I've worked with different organizations, including TIEPS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I am already known, but just to say that my name is Hilary Obona. I am a lawyer and I work with Dr. Tony Ojukwu. I'm his senior advisor. What do I need to tell you that is new? Okay, let me just say a bit about how I started. I found myself working for a human rights organization, and at early stage of my legal life, I was called upon to work with female sex workers who were being randomly arrested in Lagos at that time when I was just a young lawyer. And then I moved over to Abuja to join Action Aid, which at that time had a full program on female sex workers, okay? It was at those very early stage where HIV was quite endemic. So we were called upon to work with female sex workers to help them in terms of negotiating condom use, okay? But then a lot of them, when they do that negotiation of condom use, the partners or their client, will visit them with violence, and most of them were actually raped, okay? And in that rape, HIV was transmitted. So, and this was almost 3 decades ago. But today, the dynamism in human rights, we are no longer talking about that kind of infection anymore, but now we are talking about marginalized groups who till today continue to face different forms of violations in Nigeria, and which is very, very touching. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. So I know we've spoken a lot around the complex human rights landscape for us in Nigeria. However, just so we are able to have something to build our conversation on, I would like you to share what you feel the most pressing human rights issue is for us in Nigeria, especially when it comes to the rights and safety of LGBTQI+ persons. We know that we've experienced a lot of pushbacks. For about 2 years now, we have more arrests of LGBTQI+ persons, including clampdowns of organization. We just want to hear from your perspective what it has been like, especially for LGBTQI+ persons' rights and safety. I think Mr. Balarabi can go first.
Thank you so much. I think first of challenge that I see is lack of adherence with the strict provision of the rule of law. If we look at the provisions of the Constitution, vis-a-vis the provision of the Islamic law, we can see there are inherent provisions that respect and safeguard the right of persons, which include freedom of liberty, association of person, and freedom not to be discriminated as a person. As a rider to the Ningi case that has been earlier stated, if I can actually recall, we had an organization that went to the prison to actually brief with the 3 Ningi persons that were taken to prison. What actually transpired was the people were arrested by the Hizbah in Ningi. So the prosecution itself was handled by Ningi, Hizbah, which is an Islamic police setting entity. And also from the law establishing Hizbah, they don't even have the power to initiate prosecution of the case. They did actually prosecuted that case till its finality, and also the judge convicted on the basis that those people have confessed to commission of the offense. Because under Islamic provision, you can prove an offense by way of direct evidence, by way of confession of the alleged offense. But there are some strict conditions that has to be adhered to before a judge can actually convict. During the time of the Prophet, there is a person that has been on the verge of being convicted on the allegation of committing a sexual-related offense. That person actually confessed that he's committed that offense. But on the verge of him being sentenced, the Prophet asked him 4 questions. The first question is whether he's actually in his state of mind, whether he's actually compelled by someone to commit the offense, or whether he has been intoxicated. Then the last option was to be given the option of retraction. The Prophet asked him, did you commit this offense? He said yes. He gave him that full option before the punishment was meted upon him. There's also an instance whereby a person was on the verge of being sentenced and he starts running. And the Prophet said the person should be allowed to go. So we have to actually understand that law enforcement agencies and also the court setting, they don't actually follow the strict adherence of the law. Because when we sent lawyers to go and intimate with these persons at the prison, the wardens at the prison refused the lawyers to have interface with these persons. And if we look at the strict provision of the Constitution under at the formulation of that legislation, actually ascertain what is unnatural in the context of this kind of offenses. Then vis-a-vis, there is this amendment that is on the verge of being made of the cross-dressing in the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. So the main challenge is lack of adherence with the strict provisions of the law, and also, yes, that is the main challenge. Thank you.
Yes, okay. You can go on.
Okay, so just to add to some of the points that my colleague here has stated, more audible? Okay. I think another pressing issue that we have in Nigeria is, for me, the systemic gender-based violence that women from marginalized communities face. I think it's like a multi-layer of issues. You know, in Nigeria or even world over, women already have it very difficult, but being a queer woman in Nigeria means that you would face the issues that ordinarily women face, and then on top of that, you're going to be facing cultural biases, you're going to be facing discrimination from, whether from the workplace, accessing healthcare, education, housing, you know. So there are so many ways that women from this marginalized community face issues. And I want to just even speak especially for, there's a bill that just passed the second reading most women are not really aware of it, the surrogacy bill. Yes. Now, why it might seem like it's just something very, simple, but the words are very exclusive. You're talking about protecting women, because if you look at it, who are the people that are susceptible to being surrogates? Are poor women. Who are the women that are poor? If you bring it down, you still find that women from an intersection of marginalized groups, especially even within the LGBT community, would want to be surrogates for, let's not kid anyone, for the financial benefits, right? So when we have laws being made and we're not considering all the issues that come with it, we're not thinking about protecting, you're exposing women who are already exposed, you're further exposing them into exploitation, into more discrimination, more violence. So I think that, yes, laws and even the practices and cultures are some pressing issues. Secondly, so I don't take up all the politics of the other families, I think another thing, because we are the National Human Rights Commission, I want to say that the National Human Rights Commission have, over the years, I've seen them improve so much and being intentional about advocating and actually upholding the rights of Nigerian citizens. But I would still term them weak, but not weak in the sense that they are not doing their jobs. Weak in the sense that there's still the issue of underfunding that has to deal with the National Human Rights Commission. There's still the issue of the fact that it's a government body. So they're bound to have political interference. I'm so proud to be here today to be able to talk about sexuality with the National Human Rights Commission. This is something that ordinarily wouldn't have happened in the last few years. So it's a step in the right direction. However, if we can try to advocate for the National Human Rights Commission to have more autonomy, maybe even the act that enables them to exist, to give them more autonomy, to be able to do things without political interference, and also maybe advocate for funding. We are CSOs here. We can't just always just rely on the National Human Rights Commission to come in and solve our problems for us. We have access to donors, funders. We can always try to bring in the National Human Rights Commission because they are key stakeholders in the work that we do. Today, the Initiative for Equal Rights are here doing something with the National Human Rights Commission. It doesn't mean that only TS should do that. We have CSOs here. Please talk to the donors you have. Make the National Human Rights Commission your partner, because it's not just going to help you, it's going to help every person out there, and then they are able to do their jobs properly. So while I've mentioned the pressing issues, I've also gone to make some recommendations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. While we pass the phone to Mr. Balarabe, I love what you said, especially around resource, constraints. We've experienced a lot of pushback, and also some of them also reflect in some of the laws and policies that are being introduced. I think last year we had the cross-dresser bill, we have the review of the VAP Act right now. We are having other, pushbacks, and the conversation within the human rights movement is basically like the anti-rights, the anti-gender are doing a lot to basically erase some of the gains that we have had over the years. And this, you can see how this reflects, because Nigeria is an highly religious country, and you can see how this reflects in some of the systemic barriers that we are having to navigate. And I would like to know how these barriers, how they doing a lot to basically erase some of the gains that we have had over the years. And this, you can see how this reflects. Hilary.
Thank you very much. We work for an organization that is headed by a knight of the Catholic Church. So let us start from there. And practically every Nigerian must believe in something or not believe in something. So the bias is a natural bias for Nigerians against things that they think is opposed to their values. And that is what makes our work difficult, because our work is that of changing biases. And I will give you just 2 instances before I finish. Last year, a group of young men were arrested for alleged conducting of gay marriage in somewhere in Warri. And we knew a lot of organizations, some of you who are here also engaged with that process. But this is what the commission tried to do. Of course, we hired a very senior lawyer. We moved our office in Asaba practically to Warri. But in Abuja here, we went to the office of the Inspector General of Police, and we informed the IG office that this cannot happen under our collective watch. And so we need you to command the DPO in that Ekman police station and the Commissioner of Police to all of them stand down and give access to lawyers, to families, before we even begin to think of bail. So we got a letter from the IG. We got the IG principal, they call it principal staff officer, PSO. He is the last person you see before you get to the IG. The PSO called the DPO and told the DPO, we want these men to be released forthwith. I am here with the National Human Rights Commission. We want these men to be released. This is IG office calling DPO in one village in Delta State. You know what the DPO said? Oh God, this is a special case, so we cannot release them like that. I don't know if you understand IG, DPO. Okay? Oh God, this is a special case, so we cannot release them like that. I need to talk to my Commissioner of Police. So you want to ask me the challenge we are facing? Our major challenge is the absence of a value-driven and human rights-based law enforcement. And I am carefully choosing my word. So value-driven, I am talking about the instance I just gave you. So it means that even in the police, they don't respect hierarchy. If they don't respect hierarchy, what will they do with our own rights? If Hillary and Afolabi are attending a gay party and police swoop on us, just imagine how our lawyers would feel, what our lawyers will go through in talking to the police hierarchy. That is about values. In terms of human rights driven law enforcement, we have a law enforcement organization that doesn't read the law. The law is very, very clear. SSMPA provides for the highest form of, even if it is life imprisonment, even if it is 50 years imprisonment, it is a bailable offense. So why do you detain someone for more than 48 hours? In the case of the Warri guys, they were detained for almost 1 week. Before, with pressure and everything, they were now charged to court. In the case of the Anambra 72 or so young men that were detained, arrested and detained in 2021, it was a phone call from Tony Ojukwu that released those boys to the Commissioner of Police. In fact, the Commissioner of Police did not know about the arrest. They were arrested less than 15 minutes drive from Oka. Because I think it was Alex that said something about one of the biggest problems we have is when you arrest, they can't charge them to court because there is no evidence. Before you ground an offense of same-sex marriage, you need to prove. Before you ground an offense of they are having a gay party, was there a beautiful banner like this that says gay party in progress? No, you know, we are all lawyers. We know how strict our proof, our burden of proof is in Nigeria. Okay, so because they can't prove that, the only other way is keep them for long, frustrate them, and then get money from them. So most of the arrests that happen, just like my female sex workers in Lagos and Abuja, whenever they arrest them, it's all about extortion. So it is that I think is our biggest challenge. To conclude, the last challenge that I really don't know, maybe before we leave here today, we need to agree on what to do. Two challenges. The first one is inability to get a report, people reporting violation. And it's not just for the people in the community. Even the ordinary Nigerians, they would rather leave it for God. Okay? They will leave it for God. But the truth is that God helped us to make laws for a reason, so that those laws will be enforced. They can only be enforced if we report. The last challenge we face as an institution is mob justice. So when a mob commits a crime, except it is committed in a place like London or New York, where you know there are CCTV cameras, Big Brother is watching you, anything you do in the city of London. But in Nigeria, we don't have it. So most mob violence will never be prosecuted. And we are now seeing increasingly mob violence on people in the community. And that's a big challenge for us.
Thank you for sharing. Please hold on to the mic.
Prosecuted. I'm seeing mob violence on people in the and that's a big challenge.
Thank you for sharing. Please hold on to about, I think, a couple of months ago, we had one of the community influencers in Abuja killed, Area Mama, and also we've experienced Area Mama, and also we've experienced a lot of human rights violations and abuse from state actors. Last year we had the arrest of LGBTQIA persons, and these people were kept in custody to their phones. They couldn't reach out to any organization or family member for about 3 days before help could even reach them. And this is basically like the day-to-day experience of LGBTQI plus persons. As you're stepping out of your house, you are scared of what if a policeman sees me and thinks, oh, I look gay, and decide to just harass me, or because particularly for the arrest of the 25. It was a birthday party, and then they said someone gave them an intel, and then they got there and arrested everyone, and no idea where the order came from. So these are some of the very, annoying challenges that we face as activists, as LGBTQI plus persons in Nigeria. And I believe that, some of these could have been, should be, be managed, in the sense that for Nigeria, I know we are committed to some global treaties that are dedicated for the protection and promotion of human rights. And I know that, especially I know that you've all engaged with this document, especially for Mr. Hilary Balarabe and Augusta. And I just want to know, from your perspective, from your view, what are those gaps that you think we should look at, that you think we should address, to ensure that our national framework fully commits to this commitment, and to just ensure that the rights and dignity of LGBTQI plus persons especially is upheld?
Now, my first response is, let me take you back to the lesbian case that you mentioned. Yeah. Akudo called us like 3 or 4 days after they have been detained. And my first question to Akudo, where were you when they were detained? She said she didn't know. So even like leaders in the community did not know. And that goes to what Onide said, that their phones were taken away. They were arrested and detained incommunicado. You only do that for I don't even know, even terrorism, whether you should detain people that way. So, but when we got to know about it, of course, to the IG's office, to the station where they were kept in Garki, we bombarded them. Now, it was due to pressure that they now decided to arraign them in court. And this is where it gets funny. They drove them all the way past Abuja to a magistrate court somewhere in Mararaba. So as they were taking them, Akudo and some other crazy fellows were driving with them. And we were on the phone with Akudo, telling we would know where they were taking these guys to. So incidentally, they took them, they quickly arraigned them, denied them bail, and they were now sitting to go to be taken to detention, either in Kuje prison. So we were all against these ladies would not sleep in Kuje prison. So the ES picked up the phone and said, let us know who is the magistrate that these people are being held against. We got the magistrate, we called the magistrate said, well, that they have been properly arraigned, blah, blah, blah. Tony said, do you know who is talking to you? So what we did was, we now said, okay, we would go, since the magistrate is an appointee of the FCT judiciary, we need to go to the chief judge. So there are a lot I wouldn't say here. But what we now found out that there is usually a collaboration, criminal collaboration, between the police and some judicial officers just to collect money. You know, there is no. Do you know what the ladies were finally charged with? They were charged with disturbance of public peace, which is one of the least misdemeanor known to law. So, for instance, if you live in an estate and you decide to play Flavor Albania, and you open your window, put on your speaker on, and you were just you will be playing shake here, shake yuku. You are disturbing your neighbors. That is disturbance of public peace. In fact, you will not go to jail. It's fine. You will pay fine. So I think what we are facing is a multi-dimensional problem. And we all need to be conscious of that fact. In the way we live our lives, in the way we, you know, at some point we were, I think it was with Akudo or some other person we were discussing. Maybe we should even have a training, or we have like a guidebook on how to be gay, lesbian, queer, transgender in Nigeria. We'll publish that as a guide. So if you're organizing a party, put somebody who will be on the lookout. Because this is a passing phase. Like she said, who would have ever thought 5 years ago that we'll be having this kind of conversation here? And that's what I tell everybody. You see culture, you see values, they are passing. So, but the question is, should we all die now so that we don't enjoy it then? No, we can't die. We would live now and we'll enjoy when everything is fine. But what do? We need to adopt strategies, safety and security strategies. I have been a UN personnel working in very harsh conditions, Mali, Somalia. Once you land, they will give you a short book. Say, this is what you do. Don't go to that nightclub. If you go to that nightclub, make sure you call somebody. If police arrest you, find a way of sending WhatsApp to this number. You know, we really need to begin to adopt that so as to save lives. And I believe that a lot of lives would have been saved should we have had this kind of process.
Okay, thank you. Before you pass the mic, because we are actually running out of time, so I just want to ask you the last question that I have directed to you. You've spoken about state actors and non-state actors violating the rights of LGBTQI plus persons. I want to know if the National Human Rights Commission has, has mechanisms in place to call, to hold law enforcement agencies and also public institutes accountable when they violate the rights of LGBTQI plus persons. Please, I will appreciate if your response is very brief.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We are the only organization in this country that have the the power to investigate human rights violation, and it doesn't stop there. We make determination as to guilty or not guilty. Is a power that we hold very, very humbly, but we also know that it is a responsibility, a burden that we carry. So we have process of instituting inquiries. For instance, I just finished an inquiry with on the Nigerian Armed Forces for human rights violations committed in the Northeast, 18 months inquiry. We were there, we did SAS panel, so we can actually even do specific panel on the human rights violation for persons within the community that have been violated. But as she said, we are one organization that every day we are crying for funding. But we don't want just to be crying. We need to be doing things that even if the funding is not there, we need to continue our work. So I would dare say we have power to investigate. Our office in Benue is investigating the assassination of the chairman of the KPs. Here in Abuja, we have continued a discussion with the Nigerian police on the investigation of the death or the killing of Area Mama. And what we see really that even the police does not show keen interest in investigating human rights violations that has to do with people from the community. And this is
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. my next question is I would like to walk in your shoe for a minute as mental health and behavioral experts. How does this all, reflect on your end, especially for a country, for a society that has huge stigma around mental health? How does the work that you do address the intersections between psychological well-being and human rights, especially for LGBTQI+ persons?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think as the conversation was ongoing, I was speaking a lot of points that relates to my own practice. One of the things that Alex said is we can't deny the fact that despite all the efforts in Nigeria, being a member of the LGBTQI community is a difficult life. Despite all the effort, it would be worse if the efforts were not there. And one of the things that come with living a difficult life is that you have increase in the risk for mental health problems. Unfortunately, initially, one of the reasons why sexual and gender diversity found its way into a defined mental illness was because of the higher incidence and prevalence of mental health problems within the community. So it was thought that this was just another mental illness until later some very people that were able to delineate to show that, look, this is just a human existence in the minority end that was problematized and now lead to mental health issues. So we see all these things. But unfortunately, sometimes when people who are within the community also try to access, that is where another set of challenge sometimes now start. And that is one of the things that we are trying to see whether we can make it a lot easier. The first challenge in that domain is what I call the knowledge gap. Honest knowledge gap. As medical students in the late 90s to early 2000s, sexual and gender diversity was not a topic I was ever taught. So I graduated a doctor not knowing what this is all about. Now, even when I did my postgraduate training in mental health in the early 2000s, it was just something we mentioned in the passing. So a lot of people who graduate from both undergraduate and postgraduate medical school without having a good understanding. And when you don't have a good understanding, you make honest mistakes. You see somebody within the LGBTIQ community and you don't know what to do. You end up either doing the same thing that the family have done, that, okay, you too, maybe you think about this thing, you know it's affecting you, your parents don't like it, why not just look for a way of changing, which is you perpetrating the same thing that brought them there. Sometimes honestly, sometimes as a result of continuation of personal prejudices. Whether you are a doctor, you are a lawyer, you can have your own personal prejudices. So one of the areas that we have tried to intervene is the area of improving the knowledge of the mental health community about the issues about LGBTQIA community, so that people can do the right things. And these things they are not of one person or one group of people. It is something that must be ongoing because the knowledge gap is really real. But of course, sometimes despite bridging that knowledge gap, we now have to deal with personal prejudice. There are people who say, look, I don't want to just have this around me. There's no doubt about that. But beyond knowledge gap, we also have the issue of lack of frameworks for working with people within the community by mental health practitioners. Nigeria as a country does not have such. So if you are approached by an adolescent who is a member of the community, who is experiencing a mental health problem, there is no clear guideline on how do you deal with that. And a lot of time people make mistakes, not because they want to, but because there is no clear guideline. One of the things that we did with, I think that was with, what's the name of this NGO? I will remember shortly, is we try to develop some kind of guideline for how to deal with commercial practices when you are presented with an individual requesting for one, or when families are requesting for it. And some of these things has gradually begin to improve how we deal with some of these issues and a few other things.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm hearing a lot around disinformation, misinformation, and how that can impact how the society perceives LGBTQI plus persons. And I have to say this is the first time I'm hearing as rich as what you've shared. And I think I would love to hear more mental health, or behavioral experts talk about the intersection of human rights and also psychological well-being. Thank you so much for sharing. In 2 minutes, can you share with us how it's like for you as a public prosecutor, with the duty to enforce some of those laws, including discrimination laws, and also to safeguard fundamental human rights? How has it been for you, balancing the two, and especially also what are the challenges we face in defending and protecting the rights of your
I think in all my cases I've actually prosecuted is offenses against minors. So the distinct case that I was privileged to actually prosecute was a case of consenting adults that actually committed same-sex affair. So when I had the privilege to go through the case diary, under law, if 2 people commit an offense, there has to be conspiracy first as the charge, because it is an illegal affair from our legislation. So I charged them with criminal conspiracy to commit unnatural offense. Then the second count is unnatural offense. But nevertheless, the law has given provision as to right of legal representation. And in cases that are capital in nature, at all material times, the defendant has to be represented. I will see most at times when the charge is going to be read, the judge will normally ask whether there is a lawyer that will want to stand pro bono for the defendant. If there isn't, they have to resort to a legal practitioner with the legal aid counsel. So what I used to do is, we are in the process of actually seeing there is justice for all parties. And as a prosecutor, you are not a prosecutor in dispensation of your case. What I normally do is I look at seasoned lawyers that have actual experience around human rights cases. Then I call them and actually give them those cases to go in hand so that I prosecute and they defend on that part. That is what I do.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We are coming to the end of this conversation. However, just one question, which I'm going to frame it as a take-home question. We still have a long way to go to this program and the networking. So it's a conversation that I think we should have with yourself and also with some other institutes and humanities around what are the strategies that you think you can infuse within your organization, within your institute, to ensure that they are more committed to upholding human rights, especially for LGBTQI plus persons. One. And then the second question is, how can your institute better collaborate? On top of my head, I can think about, reporting, capacity building, awareness creation. I believe there's a lot of amazing work that you all can do together. And while we continue to network during the program, I think you can all meet each other and strategize around that. And with this, I'm leaving the floor open to the house. Hello, everyone. Hello. has it been? Do we have questions, observations, recommendations that we'd like to share? Come on, this conversation has been very, very interesting. I'm sure we must have been taking notes, feedbacks.
Okay, thank you so much. I must start by commending the panelists. For bringing to the fore some of the contributions they have made. Now, as a lawyer who has worked in this area for a long time, or for some time to be humble about that, I have observed that there is this problem with members of the community, which has to do with, if you ask me, I have always found it difficult to really place where the challenge is. Because I know over the years, a lot have gone into sensitization, education, and everywhere you go, there is this advocacy sensitization going on everywhere. But then, the problem has remained, which is that a lot of these members hardly know their rights. And when I say this, let me bring one particular important one, to the fore, which is that, now, when members of this community are arrested at any time, when we have these issues of making confessional statements, even when they have never had the privilege of making any consultation with legal representations. That's number one. Then number two is that they're always quick, even when they are arraigned, to plead guilty. Especially this other point, this second point, pleading guilty where they did not, has been a serious issue. And so, I wouldn't know, thank God CSOs are here, all of us are here. I think a lot of education still have to go into that area, making members know their right. I'm happy my colleague Hilary Bona actually mentioned one important thing as to whether it will be important for us to even have a guideline. He jokingly said that, but honestly, it is the truth of it. A guideline that will stipulate how to be probably a gay person or a member of the LGBTIA plus community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Can I respond to that? Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think Alex also shared what it's like for LGBTQIA plus person when they get arrested. The law enforcement agency basically threatens them, and especially because there is the same-sex marriage prohibition, there is the criminal code, there is the penal code, there is the Sharia law. They have, not enough knowledge around what, their rights are and what they should do in certain situations. And they just feel, oh, okay, they said if I should make this statement, they will let me go. And then they make the statement. This is part of the reasons that, the court used against us for the case of the arrest of 25. But thankful to God, only one person actually pleaded guilty. So yes, I think it's not just even about the LGBTQI plus community. I think it is about the Nigerian society at large. If you go to the community and you say, does anybody knows about the VAP Act? It will shock you that nobody knows anything about the VAP Act. Some people within the community don't even know the content of the SSMP. They'll just know about the 14 years. So yes, it's a big gap that we have to see how we can bridge. Thank you so much for that contribution. Okay.
Yeah, very briefly. Thank you, Bamidele. There's something I just want to pick out, and especially from the first point you made, where you said there's a problem whenever they go to make confessional statements. So I'll bring this as a recommendation to CSOs who have taken on the responsibility to carry out human rights education. I understand there are so many paralegal trainings that organizations have received funding for, but I have a fault with some of the paralegal trainings as a lawyer myself. I think we need to invest more time in meeting experts in the field to carry out those paralegal trainings. Because the point of being a paralegal is not just to say, I am a paralegal. The point is that whenever there's a situation, you are a first responder. You should understand what a first responder is supposed to do. The basic guidelines, and I think maybe this should be included in that manual that Hilary has mentioned. If you go to the police station, what is the first thing you are supposed to do? When you know a community member has been arrested, you need to tell them, don't write anything. Let me contact this lawyer that we know. Don't say anything. Oga police, you know fit force am make him write this thing where you dey talk. Then when you contact the police, you're supposed to know how to take information. You're supposed to know the terminology so that when you transmit this information to the lawyer that maybe the organization has contacted, you are giving the actual and accurate information about the situation. A lot of times what happens is, by the time you hear it, what happened? No, it's one thing that happened. By the time you go around, you move from Nyanya to Maraba to Karu to Kubwa, you will discover that what they are even arrested for has nothing to do with their sexuality. So I want to encourage that if we are doing paralegal trainings, we should be more intentional about it, because this is one of the root causes why people will be detained for 48 hours, 1 week, 2 months, because we do not have proper information. So I just needed to put that there.
I want to stress a bit about the issue of confessional statement. You see, that's why in this work or in this space, you actually have to resort to a lawyer that actually has empathy towards the human rights aspect of the work. Because if you look at the provision of the ACJA as well as the provision of the ACJL domesticated in various states, it has mandated that before taking statement of a suspect, it has to be in the presence of lawyer of his own choice. Then it streams further that it has to be in the presence of a member of a civil rights organization whereby there is no lawyer. So that mandatory provision, if there is no strict adherence to that provision, you can challenge that on address and the statement can be set aside and the person be set free by the court. So this is something we need to stress, to actually liaise with lawyers that empathize, that actually understand the parameter of the human rights space to actually support the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think with that, we are closing this conversation. The good thing is we have more time to have conversations around this. I think I want to thank you. Thank you so much for the amazing insight that you've shared. I think so far for the panel discussion, we've covered the very complex landscape, human rights landscape for Nigeria, and also the challenges, issues that LGBTQI plus persons especially are currently facing. And I think some of the notes I took from your contribution is the crucial need for a stronger accountability mechanism, intersectionality, the importance of us working together. Human rights is not women's right, it's not LGBTQI plus rights. It's not just your right when your right is being violated. It is everybody's right, and no one is free until we are all free. And as we conclude this conversation, I will urge everyone to reflect on our role in addressing these systemic barriers, and using this conversation as a catalyst for action, just like Afolabi initially said in his welcome, and to see how we can, build on the relationship we already have, the relationship we currently have, to advance human rights for everyone, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and or expression. And thank you so much for everyone for being part of this conversation. Thank you. And for the panel, thank you so much.
Chairman, I'm supposed to start with the director. Just no, he will start. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. I like when, like minds gather and, speaking about these things, this information, these ideas, these issues, just bringing it to light and dissecting how we can go around solving these issues that are presented. Let's give a round of applause once again for our panelists. I know time is already fast spent, so right now we are going to go into a less than 10 minutes presentation of the social perception survey. So like many of you are aware here, we do something every 2 years. We do something called a social perception survey, where we check the trends in terms of acceptance, in terms of rejection, in terms of basically familiarity with LGBTQI persons and rights in Nigeria. And we started doing this thing years ago. The first one where we did in 2017, we have been using an organization called NOI Polls, which stands for Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala Polls, to run this survey across Nigeria. And every 2 years, we get the finding that basically tells us the impact of the work that we are all doing here in Nigeria. And I want to call up on stage my colleague, who is going to take us on a very brief summary of the key finding for this year. Please, let's welcome Oluchi Fanyi to give us the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so you can. Okay, so our work at TIES stems from a deep commitment to addressing the marginalization and discrimination that sexual minorities in Nigeria face. And like my colleague has said, this is what has led us to engage in a number of research initiatives over the years, one of which is our biannual social perception survey. These surveys over the years have given us insights into how Nigerians perceive LGBTQIA individuals. And more importantly, it also lets us know how these perceptions have evolved over the years. Sorry, you can. Next slide. As a country, Nigeria has always struggled with intolerance for diversity, be it tribal, cultural, or religious. Unfortunately, this intolerance or lack of acceptance for people who are different also extends to differences in sexual orientation and gender diversity. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So we see cases of how in Christians in Muslim-dominated areas, or people from like a different ethnic region, how community rejects those who are different, and this gives us an understanding of how much intolerance, and basically helps us understand the challenges that LGBTQI individuals face daily in Nigeria. For the 2024 Social Perception Survey, the Initiative for Equal Rights commissioned NOI Polls again, just like we did in 2013, to conduct this survey. Sorry, you can move to the next slide. So this survey engaged 1,586 Nigerians across the 6 geopolitical zones. It was conducted through telephone interviews and in multiple languages. Key demographics: the proportion of male and female respondents were almost equal, with 55% and 49% respectively. All geopolitical zones were adequately represented in this survey, like I said before. Then the age group with the highest frequency in the survey was 36 to 60, which covered 65%, and then the lowest age group was 60 plus, which covered 5%. So this shows how we're able to get like a representative view of how Nigerians, in wide range of Nigerians from like different walks of life, different educational levels, and different religions, geopolitical zones, how Nigerians actually feel about LGBTQIA individuals. Firstly, we asked Nigerians, how comfortable are you having a neighbor, friend, acquaintance, or family member who identifies as LGBTQIA? So on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 was very uncomfortable and 5 is very comfortable. For how comfortable are you with having a friend who identifies as LGBTQIA, 56% said they were very uncomfortable. With having a neighbor who identifies as LGBTQIA+, 54% were very uncomfortable. With having an acquaintance who identifies as LGBTQIA+, 52% were very uncomfortable. And a family member who identifies as LGBTQIA, 56% were very uncomfortable. So despite the high levels of discomfort, 26% of respondents stated that they would accept a family member if they identified as LGBTQIA+. Sorry, next slide. We also asked Nigerians if they supported the criminalization of homosexuality in Nigeria. Nationwide, we got a percentage of 66%, and while that is a lot, we would say it's a decline. So in 2013, when we first launched this first social perception survey, which NOI Polls conducted, we got 92% of respondents who supported the decriminalization of homosexuality. But as of 2024, that has reduced to 66%. So we also noted that the older population remains the most supportive of criminalization, indicating generational differences in attitudes. Okay, we also asked, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is not important at all and 5 is very important, how important is it to you for a person's sexuality to align with your personal beliefs? 32% noted nationwide that it's very important. Out of that 32%, we noted 35% were male and 28% were female, and so on and so forth. So nationwide, 69% of respondents consider it very important or important for a person's sexuality to align with their own personal beliefs, with the Northwest showing the highest alignment importance at 80%. Sorry. We also asked, should gay people be punished for being gay or lesbian? There was the finding of 81% who said yes, and then 16% who said no. This is the disaggregation of data across gender, geopolitical zones, and age group. So a significant majority, 81% nationwide, believe gay people should be punished, with the highest support in the Northwest, 93%, and among older age groups, 61 plus at 82%. Next. Okay. Then we also asked if they have changed their mind about the treatment of gay people in the past 5 years. If yes, was the change open to accepting them? So in the past 5 years, 42% of Nigerians said that they have actually changed their acceptance of gay people, and out of the 42%, 66% came from the Southeast, 62% from the Southwest, leading in openness, while Northwest was the least out of the geopolitical zones with 13%. Then also, we asked if the respondents believed LGBTQI persons should have access to the same basic rights, dignity, freedom of speech, housing, health, wages, etc. as everyone else. 43% of respondents say yes nationwide, while 52% said no. Then it's broken across the geopolitical zones, age, gender, and so on and so forth. So this is not just the data that we collected in this survey. There are about like 16 different questions, but these are the key findings that we've highlighted. So other data and other findings can be found in the complete report, which will be available on our site before the year ends. So questions for actions. Given the findings of this survey, what role can individuals and communities play in shifting social perceptions towards greater acceptance and respect for LGBTQI persons in Nigeria? Secondly, how can we foster a more inclusive society where differences, whether in religion, tribe, very importantly sexual orientation, are respected and valued rather than met with intolerance or punitive measures? Then lastly, decline in support for criminalization, particularly among the younger population, is a significant step forward. How can we leverage this momentum to drive meaningful change in public policies and societal attitudes? So this survey highlights both the challenges we face and the opportunities we must seize. As advocates, researchers, and policymakers, it's our responsibility to ensure that Nigeria evolves into a society that values diversity and protects the rights of all its citizens, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. We at TS remain committed to this cause, and we invite all of you to join us in this journey. Together we can build a Nigeria where differences are celebrated, not condemned.
Thank you so much, Oluchi, for that. And every 2 years, I always anticipate the social perception survey, because a lot of the time, it seems bleak with the work that we do. Sometimes you have, there's something that people say, you take 2 steps forward and you take about 5 backwards. And when these things happen, we tend to be very forlorn. We tend to, see the future as bleak. But I always wait for the social perception survey, because at least you see something, you see a change, no matter how small, you see something. And sometimes it's 1%, it's 2%, other times it's 20%. And it tells us that the work we are doing is actually getting out there, and change is coming, even though slow, but it is happening. And definitely we'll get to a future where human rights for all Nigerians is actually enforced, appreciated, and true in reality. So on this note, we have come to the end of this event, and I will just give the closing remark, and after we can just eat and network and have cocktails. So permit me, dear extinguished guests, esteemed speaker, and participants in general, as well as our panelists. We have come to the 10th edition of the Human Rights, Sexuality, and the Law Symposium. We have come and we have done it, and we have finally drawn the curtain on today. And I want to use this opportunity to extend heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has contributed to making this event a success. The Initiative for Equal Rights, as well as our team. Now you see about 5-6 of us here, but TEARS is way larger than that. We are an organization of about 30 people, and 30 steadfast, passionate people who are constantly doing the work. And they have made sure that, you know, everything that you see today has come into fruition. And I want to thank the team as the Initiative for Equal Rights, as well as our executive director who is seated here. Also, we want to thank the NHRC, who has always provided support, who has always been there. Earlier in the year, I think in January or February, when we started having the conversation about this. And on the one hand, we were like, we wonder what the NHRC would say when we proposed this. And it was with welcome arms and with help, and you know, making staff available to work with the TS team to ensure that today has been a success. And I thank the NHRC and the Executive Secretary, as well as Mr. Hillary, for all of that. Special thanks to Chioma. I don't know if she's here. So over the years, this symposium has, you know, it has become a beacon of hope, courage, and resilience for the community. Like Afolabi earlier mentioned, when we started it for the first time, it was held in Abuja, and the keynote speaker was the then Executive Director of the Human Rights, National Human Rights Commission. 10 years later, we are back here, and keynote speaker again being the Executive Director of the National Human Rights Commission. However, in the course of the in-between, we have been having it in Lagos, and it has been a platform where, you know, community, civil society, as well as state actors can come together to share ideas, to connect, and just basically see it as a symbol of hope. Because what are we saying that in 2024 we can gather to talk about sexuality? This is not something that we could have done years ago. So today now, through the insightful keynote address, the vibrant panel discussion, and the unveiling of our human rights report for 2024, we have once again demonstrated the power of collective action and dialogue in confronting the challenges before us. So the theme, institutional responsibility in upholding human rights for all, has underscored, you know, a very important role that institutions, Nigerian institutions, as well as stakeholders have to play in protecting and promoting the rights of every individual, regardless of their identity or orientation. So I charge all of us here today, not just advocates, not just activists, but also state actors, but also institutions, to advocate for accountability and to become pillars of justice and equity within their own spheres of influence. So as we leave here today, let us carry forward with us the ideas, the strategies, and commitment that we have shared in this space. Let this symposium not just be an event, but let it be a call of action to work collaboratively to build bridges and to ensure that the human rights of all Nigerians are not an aspiration, but lived reality for everyone in Nigeria and beyond. To all of our allies, to our partners, to our funders, donors, and supporters, we thank you all for walking this journey with us. Your solidarity has been one of our driving forces and has been our resolve as well. And we thank you for your contribution. So I want to also thank all of us seated here today who has made it a point of contact to be here. I want to thank the staff of NHRC that are here. I want to thank the head of Mission Portugal who just left. I want to thank the Embassy of Netherlands who have also left. I want to thank EU delegation to Nigeria. I want to thank GIZ Nigeria. I always don't know how to pronounce that. I want to thank Chefs. I want to thank Cream de la Cream. I want to thank the Free to Be Me Secretariat. I want to thank LIRAD. I want to thank ICA. I also want to thank the Federal Port Authority. I want to thank Olive Right Health Initiative. I want to thank Youth Network for Community and Sustainable Development. I want to thank ICA, International Center for Advocacy Rights to Health. I want to thank NEP1. I want to thank NASO, Nigeria Association of Social Workers. I want to thank Institute of Human Virology, Nigeria. I want to thank TAI Initiative. I want to thank all of you and our partners, our 24 partners that we mentioned earlier, who have made it here today. And lastly, I want to thank the US Embassy for also being here. Special thanks to Andre for showing up. I want to thank all of you for being here today and for supporting us. And I wish you all farewells and safe travels back to your destination. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much on behalf of the Initiative for Equal Rights. Thank you. Okay, so food is going around. We also have cocktails. You can walk up to the cocktail bar and order any cocktail or mocktail of your choice. And please, let's mingle, let's network, let's get to know each other, and let's see some other time again. Thank you. The years, this symposium has, it has become a beacon of hope, courage, and resilience for the community. Like Afolabi earlier mentioned, when we started it for the first time, it was held in Abuja, and the keynote speaker was the then Executive Director of the National Human Rights Commission. 10 years later, we are back here, and keynote speaker again being the Executive Director of the National Human Rights Commission. However, in the course of the in-between, we have been having it in Lagos, and it has been a platform where, community, civil society, as well as state actors can come together to share ideas, to connect, and just basically see it as a symbol of hope. Because what are we saying that in 2024 we can gather to talk about sexuality? This is not something that we could have done years ago. So today now, through the insightful keynote address, the vibrant panel discussion, and the unveiling of our human rights report for 2024, we have once again demonstrated the power of collective action and dialogue in conflict.